Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Farmers Academy. It is my absolute pleasure to be welcoming you here for today's BRAT training. The Beginners in Regulatory Affairs training is aimed at all the enthusiast prospective regulators who are curious about the industry, the subsector, and really want to know if this is a good avenue to pursue. So let's get right into it as I share my presentation. I want you all to get excited, to get cozy, grab some water, sit tight, and enjoy an introduction to regulatory affairs for pharmacy. So, regulatory affairs is a subsector of every industry. You have it in IT, you have it in food, you have it in pharma. And today we're going to discuss a little bit about the pharma side of regulatory affairs. Let's look at an outline that we have for today. We are just briefly going to touch up on an introduction just to ease you in. And then we're going to jump into dossiers. What are they for health products? And then we're going to look at regulatory requirements. We're also going to look at potential regulatory work. So, some of the common roles that a regulatory affairs pharmacist or officer can occupy. And then we're also going to see how you can get started. Because I know if you're here, you probably want to switch sectors. You may be currently in retail, perhaps you're in hospital, but you really want to get into regulatory affairs. So I got you. And then we're going to conclude the entire class with a little bit of a recap. And yes, an assessment if you do want to get your certification so that we can check if you grasped a few concepts. All right. So, with the introduction, what is regulatory affairs? Now, before we go, who am I? Like, I'm just here talking. I'm Patricia Ngetsam. I am a regulatory affairs pharmacist. At this point, I consider myself senior because it's been more than 6 years. But I started off as an RP at a manufacturing company. So I was a responsible pharmacist and I had regulatory roles, pharmacovigilance roles within that position, and obviously overlooking everything. But my biggest crux of experience came from SAPRA, the actual National Regulatory Authority for Health Products. So that's where my authority and experience comes from. As a former SAPRA employee, I got all the tea on how the regulator of the country operates and how the industry and the subsector function and what positions you can actually occupy in the near future. All right. So, like I said, I was an RA pharmacist. I kind of still am, but now I consult. And SAPRA, I was doing bioequivalence and pharmaceutical analysis. So back in the day, it used to be called PNA. Now it's bioequivalence and quality, module 3, basically. So that was my baby, evaluating dossiers that came in for registration. Then I was in RP and also I consult basically now at Pharmers and Pharmers Academy. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. We want to make sure you are not distracted. So put your phones away, put them on silent or on vibrate. Keep hydrated, have some water. Okay, and participate. There will be quiz pop-up questions. Do answer them. They may come up also on your homework, the little assessment questionnaire. So do answer them there as well. But it's just to make sure that you've understood the work. So when you revert back or when you tell someone back what you've learned, it kind of solidifies it in your head a little bit better. Then you want to time yourself because yes, this is officially the beginning of your regulatory affairs experience, your training, so to speak. So after this session, you're literally going to be able to say on your CV that you have regulatory training for beginners. You have a basic understanding of regulatory affairs. And if you do the assessment and pass it, you will get a certificate so you can add that to your CV as well. Okay. Then you want to record how long it takes you, all the self-learning, self-study that you do so that you can start raking up experience. So somebody who's never spent a day in RA versus you who spend 24 hours or 50 hours or 100 hours already are stepping up and differentiating yourself from the rest. Okay. And this is also going to help you determine if you want to go ahead into the full-blown short course that we have for medicine registration. So you're going to learn how to compile a dossier in ECTD format from scratch through all 5 modules. So if this interests you, then you can go further to the RASC or the RASCA and take it from there. All right. Also have a pen and paper in case an idea pops up, a question, a query. You want to write it down immediately so you don't forget, and then you can email us so that we can respond and assist you in whichever way possible. Another little disclaimer here is that this is Pharmers Academy's proprietary information. So this is our IP. None of these views and information comes from SAPRA or its advisory committees, which I was a part of once upon a time. But the development of this short course or this little master class is completely Pharmers Academy. So you may not copy, replicate, share this without permission to anyone else out there, because that's kind of like problematic. So if you need any information or documentation, or if you'd like to replicate any of this work, pop us an email. We're very understanding. As long as we know who and where and why and what, we'll probably be fine with it. But please just let us know. Okay, the objectives and outcomes of this little training session are as follows. So objectives are what we aim to do. So we want to discover what this pharma sector is, because you probably know community, you know hospital, you know retail, you know industry manufacturing, but do you know RA? Okay, this will help you determine if it's an interesting avenue to take or not. We want to know if you have an understanding of RA at first glance so that when the regulator speaks, the regulator, you know kind of how to frame it better. You'll be able to have resources to know where to go to look for further information. And it's kind of just like a little door into this gigantic sector. So you'll be able to explore more as you go. Then you want to know what work environments and options there are, because maybe you only know of one or two, but there are actually 10 sub mini sectors or possible places for regulatory affairs, pharmacists or officers or scientists to work in. So we're going to look at those too, and this will give you an other opening into scope, potential roles, potential places to apply for work, and how to best navigate you learning this sector, understanding how to compile or evaluate dossiers, and where every little bit fits. Then you want to know the stakeholders because do you know associations? Do you know regulators? Do you know applicants? You want to know who you're looking at, who the key players are. You want to be able to address them depending on need and to be able to not faff around and go straight to who you need at that moment. So that will help you narrow your focus. Okay. Then we want to plan ahead. You want to get ready. Getting into regulatory affairs is not an overnight type of thing. You're going to have to pace yourself and plan for the next coming years, probably 3 to 5. At the end of 5 years, you probably want to say that I want to have started an RA position and have worked in it for maybe 6 months already. That's your 5 year plan. How do you get there? You start on day one with learning about the industry or subsector, learning about different roles and how to go about them. And this is where you are now. This is day one. So you want to know how to plan your career shift, how to plan. Maybe you're not even shifting. Maybe you're already a beginner in a new role, but you want to learn about it so that you can frame your work better. Maybe you want to fast track your learning so that you're not clueless for the first 6 months. This is also an excellent opportunity to do that. So you want to plan maybe for 6 months, maybe for 12 months, maybe for 3 years or 5. And then you want resources because how do you extend or ask for help or reach out if you don't know who or where? So we're going to look at some associations, some documentation, some publishing, some websites, and various resources that will help you take you a lot further. So if you're happy, stay tuned and let's get right into it. Again, welcome to the Academy. Oops, my ring just fell. Welcome to Pharmers Academy. I want to preempt this little training by also saying that we are a fully blown 30 plus course academy. We have several facilitators and instructors, and we take training and educational or personal development very seriously. So do take your time to really peruse through our website. Take your time to see all the available other short courses that are available to you and their little brief summaries or course descriptions in our Pharmers Academy 2025 brochure. Available on our website. You can download it at Pharmers under the Academy tab or pop us an email and ask for it and we'll attach it and send it right back to you. This BRAT course is a free training because we're so confident of the quality and content that we provide. So have a taste. This is your way of seeing if this academy and the format of our courses is suitable for you. We want to tickle your curiosity and really reel you in by giving you a taste beforehand. So if at the end of this training, you feel like, yes, I actually love this, I want to get into RA, then do check out our RASC and RASCA short courses for dossier compilations and our brand new evaluator course, the MES, Medicine Evaluator short course for on the other side as an evaluator, receiving the dossiers and now having to go through each module to determine if they can be registered or not. So our brand new Unisolve short course is also launching this year in March. So that will help all those wishing to either enter or re-enter the retail spaces to do so comfortably. We're going to teach you in a 2-part short course the theory behind dispensing and the Unisolve program with all of its options, as well as part 2 with the practical aspects where you get to come to our pharmacy based in Centurion to do 5 days work of practicals, running through all of the most common tasks of a day-to-day pharmacy, receiving stock, dispensing medicines, loading prescriptions, requesting or reviewing old prescriptions, doing stock take or cycle counts, returning stock, and everything like that. So the stock management software is available for training from March. And that's an exciting one. I'm really excited for that one. But for now, let's get into BRAT with no further ado. Let's look at some key terms. You know, with every sector, there's a language, there's a lingo. People talk a lot of abbreviations in pharma, especially in manufacturing. You'll hear things like CAPA and BMR and Dossier and RIMS and ECTD. And you're like, are these people speaking Japanese or what? So a good place to start is to actually understand the lingo so that when you see it or read it somewhere or hear it, you're like, oh, I know what that means. And it doesn't like mind block you from hearing anything else after that, because you'll be stuck on that one abbreviation while the person is talking away or whilst you're supposed to read a whole document and now you're stuck on the first few letters. So what is a dossier? Now, I will use very informal language here. The point is for you to understand it as a layperson. If you want scientific terms and very uppity presentations, this is probably not the place for you. Beginners, you want to take it easy. You'll use the fancier language in the formal sessions when you're already a pro within the sector. So a dossier basically is like a file. Okay, this file is going to contain all of the information necessary for medicine registration. So when a regulator looks at this new medicine that you're trying to apply for, they want to know who's manufacturing it, what the manufacturing plant looks like, who the applicant is, what ingredients are going in there, what manufacturing methods or techniques are being used, what clinical evidence do you even have to make sure that this product will have any efficacy. So it's a compilation of all relevant scientific data and administrative information about a specific product, health product, or drug, or medicine. So that is basically what a dossier is. It used to be paper-based, so you would literally have files or folders and like page through section A, section B, whatever. But now it's mainly electronic, so you'll have a little USB with a regular Word or PDF format folder with all the information in it. Compliance. Compliance is a word meaning that you have to abide by something. You have to comply to something. So compliance is like the state of reaching standards or attaining those standards and maintaining them. If I say you need to reach compliance in your bed making, it means I would have taught you a technique of making your bed and that you would have reached it and make your bed every day, right? So compliance to regulations, to standards. You have to comply to the law. You have to comply to various guidelines and overall policies. So compliance is towards something that is already set and established by an authority. ICH, International Council or Committee of Harmonization for Medicines, Human Medicines, and they are basically like an organization that helps harmonize all of the guidelines and rules pertaining to medicines for human health, and their manufacturing, their registration, and all of that. So ICH is very, very tightly knit with the EMA, which is the European Medicines Agency, and they really work closely together with other major agencies in the world to uniformize, to harmonize guidelines. So the outcome there is that the guidelines we use in South Africa will be very similar, if not the same, as the guidelines used in Europe when the two have aligned, right? SAPRA, the local regulator in South Africa, aligns itself with the EMA. So besides module one, which we're going to see much later, all other modules in a dossier are aligned with the international guidelines, the EMA, the FDA, and others. And this is because of the ICH, which has harmonized it for the entire world. So sectors, I mean, I don't know why that's even in there. A sector is a sector, right? If you have a whole and then you divide it in four, you have four sectors or four quarters. If you have a sector is a portion of a whole thing. So in the pharmacy industry as a whole, you have different sectors like regulatory affairs and community and hospital and various others. That's pretty self-explanatory. RIMS is the new SAPRA Regulatory Information Management System. Very exciting. They've already launched part of it last year, but it's rolling out now. The new ECTD 3.1. So all that on the RIMS portal, but more of it in the actual short course, not so much here. NUH is the National Department of Health. They obviously have a say into the professionals that are registered, the premises that are licensed for pharma. SAPRA is the regulator. They obviously have a mandate to the Medicines and Related Substance Act and health in general in the country, health products and health establishments to be licensed. They do inspections, they set policies, they set regulations, and a whole lot of other stuff. NGO is non-governmental organization. A lot of them work hand in hand with the NDOH and to a lesser extent with SAPRA in terms of ensuring certain national programs, health programs, meet their objectives. So you'll have certain NGOs that are assisting with pharmacovigilance, for example, entering ADR cases, adverse drug reaction cases, and processing them and things like that. The EMA I mentioned is the European Medicines Agency. Very huge, very potent. They deal with all 27 nations in Europe and the rest of the world in regulating medicines. So here I just want to point out that medicines are for humans and for animals. So the ICH only deals with humans, but the EMA and all other regulators also have an aspect of veterinary health medicines. Okay. ECTD is the latest and currently acceptable format for dossiers to be compiled in and submitted and evaluated. So before ECTD, we had CTD, and before CTD, there were many others like, what was it? The the MBR and the MRF and other formats, which older medicines may actually even still be in, but they're late now for the cutoff time to do baselines and to register them as ECTD. So probably last year you would still find one or two here and there, but I think right now it's safe to say there are no more old format medicines. And if you do come across any, get our masterclass 106 for conversions and for baseline applications, because they all need to be redone and resubmitted. Okay, so ECTD is an international format. It is used in most places around the world now, thanks to ICH and other harmonization efforts. So the good thing is, if you know how to compile ECTD here in South Africa, you'll be able to compile ECTD in Japan, in UK, in the US, in China, and everywhere else. So it is an international format. Now, modules 1 to 5 are the modules you find in the ECTD structure in a dossier. So, modules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all of the structural components that make up a dossier. GXP is a set of good practices pertaining to the pharmaceutical industry. You get a ton of them. There's GMP for good manufacturing. There's GCP for good clinical practice. There's GPP for good pharmacy practice. There's GRP for good regulatory practice. By the way, we have short courses on all these individually, so go check that brochure. There's GWP for good warehousing or wholesaling practice, GDP for good documentation practice, good distribution practice, good regulatory and reliance practice. There's a ton of GXPs. So if you're interested in specific niche sectors of pharma, go check those out. And multidisciplinary is basically a word thrown around because everything overlaps in pharma. A lot of companies are multidisciplinary, a lot of roles are multidisciplinary. The industry itself is multidisciplinary. So, however big you want to take it, I mean, there's no pharma without biopharma, there's no pharma without vigilance, there's no pharma without technology. I mean, they all cross and overlap. The WHO is, of course, the World Health Organization, but the WHO PQ is the pre-qualifier. So we're going to talk about that in the short course. It is a program to help fast track certain premises for API manufacturers, certain APIs for registration and licensing. So that's a program the WHO offers to help manufacturers and APIs along. Studies are various. You have clinical trials, which produce various types of studies. You have clinical studies, pharmaceutical studies, or pharmaceutic study data. So studies is basically any test or large-scale trial in humans, in animals, and various. The FDA is the Food and Drug Administration for the USA. They are the regulator in the US. So they are also big players in the world, along with the EMA, the WHO. They are heavyweights, okay? They dictate a lot of the policies, a lot of the rules. They set trends. They're very innovative. So they're ones to look out for. Biologicals or biologics, these are human compounds like maybe blood plasma. You also get vaccines in this category. So it's a type of medicine that also has its own special requirements for registration and regulations. SAPRA with a double A and no H is an association for the Southern African regulatory sphere. Very, very good work that they do, keeping us updated. I always get emails pop up with updates and new releases and new communication from SAPRA, from BOMRA, from all these other regulators. So register with them. It's an association. They will really give you a lot of insight and highlights. Clinical trials, yes, phase 1 through 4. This is when there's a new chemical entity that needs to be, that is discovered or that was found to have some sort of efficacy towards a disease. It's refined in phase 1, in phase 2, in phase 3, it's tested on humans or healthy humans, and then on the sick disease population. Sometimes it may be tested on animals in phase 2 or so, but for the most part, not. And then it enters the market before phase 4 is ongoing, post-market surveillance for long-term long-term safety data. So clinical trials is a whole huge subsector on its own, but GCP will help you with that. So good clinical practices definitely speak to clinical trials. So yeah, register for that if you're interested. HREC, HREC, basically for ethics, when you're applying for a new clinical trial or to do testing in humans, you have to apply for ethics. They give the approval, so they kind of vet what do you want to do, in whom, where, when, for how long, and they're like, okay, go ahead, or nah, access denied. Fix your protocol, fix your trials, fix your population group or fix ABC and then come back to us. Um, and then clients, customers, obviously, they determine what sort of parameters and quality standards medicines actually have. In the last few years, customers have really been huge on the impact they make in manufacturing companies. Because if your packaging, for example, is lousy and a customer isn't going to reach for your product and they're going to reach for another more bright, appealing, and beautiful one, you're not going to sell your medicines. So, especially for over the counter or complementary medicines, the customer has a lot of say. When it's prescription stuff, it's actually the prescriber that will determine what the patient or client gets. So that's a little different. But clients' feedback is huge, and their desires and requests are also very much featured into regulations. And then CROs, these are research organizations that work closely with clinical trials, with research and development, with universities and labs for finding potential new entities or refining current existing entities or, matching proteins and genes to chemical compounds and checking reactions and checking for um, physiological changes. So that's what they do. And lastly, health products, because that's the whole point of regulatory affairs. We're here to regulate health products. So these are divided into two. You have the medicines on one side, including complementary and orthodox and biologics and vaccines and um, all the disciplines, health specific or herbal and Western medicine or Eastern, whatever, Chinese traditional. And then you have devices, including IVDs. So all the borderline stuff, the bandages, the thermometers, the wheelchairs, the crutches, the radiation machines, the scanners, the face mask, the testing devices, the reagents, the glucose monitors, the high blood pressure cuffs and machines, and a lot of tech merges here with pharma. So all of these are within devices, and all that's medicinal and medication is within medicines. So those are the two that form health products, the two big categories that come together and form health products in general. Now, there are borderline stuff. You'll have sometimes cosmetics, you'll have food that kind of really sit on the borders, and certain times the authority will form special working groups to assess each application individually. So if you have a product that maybe is for beauty, maybe it's a skincare, but it also goes through the skin, maybe it's transdermal, and maybe it has a bit of medicine that also helps the skin, it becomes a very complex situation. Um, Sometimes food it can be like powders, protein powders that are mixed with collagen and uh, wheat or whey protein. And you see, it's kind of nutraceutical. So it has food aspects, it has pharma aspects, and then concentrations need to be determined and things like that. So whew, I've rambled a lot. More in upcoming short courses or master classes, but for now, let's keep it moving. So we kind of discussed what regulatory affairs is in a nutshell. You want to keep the public safe as it pertains to pharmaceuticals and health products. So it really involves all the regulations, all the policies, all the acts, um, all the rules, the regulations, um, the manufacturing processes, the licensing, the medicines themselves, the formulations. It really checks every aspect of bringing a medicine together and letting it be available on shelves or in the marketplace for a consumer, a possible potential patient to take, and for it to be safe, for it to be of quality, and for it to have efficacy. Because if you're just going to take water and it does nothing to you, or if you're going to take something and it's toxic or harms you, you don't want that. So that's it. Regulatory affairs is all the components working together to make the public safe with respect to medicines and health products. Um, in a nutshell, if you want a fancy definition, you could probably look it up or check the guideline. So products needing regulations in pharma, like we said, there's medicines on one side, all the herbs, the chemicals, the biologics, the orthodox, and then all the devices, the class A, B, C's, and D's. So in South Africa, there's four classification of medical devices. You get class A, B, C, and D, and they're all ranked according to risk. So it's a risk-based classification. Now, A's, usually you can get away with not even licensing because if they are non-measuring and non-sterile, you're fine. So, for example, a thermometer is measuring because it measures temperature. So, that would not be fine under Class A of non licensable. But gauze or a band aid that goes over a scrape is non measuring and for the most part doesn't have to be sterile. Except if it's those covered ones that need to be sterile. Just trying to think of an example now of a class A measuring and sterile. You have the covered bandages that you need to open in a plastic. You have the thermometers, whether the mercury ones, the infrared ones, those measure. So yeah, then they become class A measuring or sterile or class B. Again, it moves up depending on the risk levels. And there is a whole algorithm full of how to determine a class for medical devices. And yes, you've guessed it, we do have a medical device master class or course if you're interested in that. It's very intricate. It goes into all of the various scenarios of determining classes of medical devices and the application process and everything like that. But be mindful that both of these classes or categories have extensive regulations attached to them. So another thing you need to know about regulatory affairs is that regulations themselves are the crux of this sector. Because how are you going to know? You always have to refer back to the written regulation, to the policy, to the guide, and that's from the authorities. So to be a good regulatory affairs officer or pharmacist or regulator, you have to master the guides, the regulations, and the policies. Okay. Now we can look at dossiers. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. Um, let's pause and be back in 5. Okay, dossiers. What are dossiers? They're folders containing organized scientific information on a health product. I think I already said that earlier. So you have multiple formats, older formats up until present day, which is ECTD. Um, if you need more info on that background, there is guidelines you can read up, but basically just know that the current format is ECTD, and in the past, there were others. The dossier structure, like we mentioned, there's module 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They each have a name or an identifier and subfolders within them called nodes. So if you say module 1, node 1, or module 1, node 2, you're referring to a specific requirement. Module 1 is the administrative module. Usually it's country specific. That is the one that in South Africa, SAPRA will determine and print guidelines for specifically. In Zimbabwe, Module 1 will be specific to Zimbabwe. In Namibia, it'll be specific to Namibia. In China, it'll be specific to China. But every other module, 2, 3, 4, and 5, will have the exact same structure. Isn't that beautiful? So when you buy a dossier, let's say it's a multinational, they produce medicines in India, and you buy a dossier from their principal, you can register it in South Africa, same dossier, just change module 1. You can register it in Nigeria, same module dossiers, just change module 1. You can register it in Kenya, same dossier, just change module 1, etc., etc. So this is why in our short course, we have developed a ECTD dossier format for compilation with different modules that you can pick from electives for different countries. So that's an exciting add-on. Oh my gosh, stay tuned for that this 2025. So you'll be able to know what a dossier add-on for Module 1 looks like in various other countries around the world. So Module 2 will be the summaries. Module 3 will be quality. Like I said, I was in charge of Module 3 evaluation. So quality and bioequivalence was my expertise. Module 4 is for the 5 is efficacy, 4 is safety. So everything pertaining to safety in module 4, everything pertaining to quality in module 3, everything pertaining to efficacy in module 5. So what do you find in these dossiers? Few of the components that are typically available in a dossier, you have certificates, okay, quality certificates, GMP certificates, certificates from the manufacturers showing that they are licensed, certificates of, you have all kinds of certificates, even from the applicant, the pharmacist who's in charge of the application, their registration certificate, the company's certificates for company registration or any other licenses they have. You get a ton of certificates, and most of them come in module 1. You get expert information. Sometimes the experts that are conducting some trials or some tests, you have their CVs, their information. You get batch documents. They want to usually see triplicates of everything. So if you're submitting batch information, you usually have to have 3 separate batches and the information for those to show that it's replicable and it's constant. You'll get test results for comparative dissolution, for all kinds of studies, um, and applicant details, third-party details. If you're signing contracts with another company, maybe you're contracting your API manufacturing to company X, and you're only assembling or compounding the last bit for the final product at company Y, then you need to have all those contracts in place and available on request. You get a ton more other components. This was just a brief. I mean, if you're going to think of 5 modules with 5 different sets of information, it's a lot. So, and dossiers used to be really thick. People in the day used to walk with suitcases, and storerooms were piled up high with documents in dossiers. So now with a little USB, you can have 100 dossiers on there, but there's still all that information converted to PDF. So you have a ton of documents in that folder in each of the modules. Now we can look at submission types. So in South Africa, we will submit to SAPRA, the regulator, and they accept new applications if it's your first time or if it's a new product that isn't yet on the market. That's a new application. If it's a change, like for example, you already had a new application last year, but this year you decided to change addresses. Maybe you moved to a bigger plant. Whoop, whoop, for growth. Maybe you changed flavors in your syrup. Maybe you changed your suppliers in your bottles. Maybe you changed whatever. So the initial dossier is no longer what the authority has on paper. You have to signal it to them. So you submit an amendment application to show them what changes you've made. And then there's renewal applications, right? Even if nothing changes, after 5 years, you have to submit a renewal. Like, is everything okay? Yes, same. So those are the 3 types of applications. And then the types of dossiers. So like I said, every new application can be either a new chemical entity, like a brand new compound, never been on the market, you're the first. So you will get that 10 to 15 years of exclusivity before generics can come in. Or you're a generic, a multi-source. Maybe you're just replicating something that's already out there, making it sweeter, harder, thicker, or not even. It could be the exact same as somebody else after their exclusive period has passed. Or maybe you're submitting complementary medicines, which have a different pathway, different requirements. These are herbal or dietary/pharma medicines or compounds. They also have their own requirements. Or maybe it's biologics. These also have their specific dossier forms. You need to provide specific types of evidence, and the formats are different. Or it's orthodox, typical medicine, mainstream medicines. Most of the tablets that people pop are orthodox medicines. So we can look at the diagram here. This is from the SAPRA website, but they were describing on the new RIMS portal how an application is typically going to move through. So you can have a look there and see how submissions change from your first application, which has a reference of 4 zeros. And then if any queries come from it, then it's version 001. If you respond and another query comes, 0002. If you submit an amendment because you've changed something, it now becomes 0003. And it just helps track that application or registration all along until the day you decide to discontinue this medicine. Maybe safety data came out that were really tragic, and you're like, okay, no, let's stop making this discontinued, remove from the market, and then it's done. So it goes into the abyss. But that's basically the life cycle of medicine. Let's look at regulatory requirements now. What is actually necessary for establishments and products to exist? Now, as a professional in South Africa, you will need to either be a pharmacist, a medical practitioner, a nurse, or any equivalent degree in order to qualify in most of the posts. Now, if you have and that's equivalent to NQF7 or higher. If you have an NQF4, that means you might be an assistant, a post basic, or a nursing assistant, or a student. You may still qualify for officer positions, but a lot of the responsibilities and higher requirements you will not be able to fulfill. If you have an MSc or other equivalent science degrees, you may also be an officer or even a biotechnician that helps supply some of the information to the dossier. So the tip here is to apply to a position using your highest qualification to meet the requirement. So anyone who's on top can apply to anything below. So a pharmacist can be an officer or fill in the role of a pharmacist or even of an RP, which is usually the highest in pharma. So no company in pharmacy can operate without a responsible pharmacist. Like that's the crux and apex. And then they can be a pharmacist, a second pharmacist, an officer, and anything else, but you can't work your way up the opposite way. So, excuse me, an assistant cannot be an RP or a medical technician or a scientist can never be the RP unless they have a pharmacy degree. So that's basically common sense, but just for your awareness. You have these basic three tiers. And even in the roles that they occupy, like I said, a responsible pharmacist for an applicant company, maybe a manufacturer, maybe an importer, maybe a consultant, you have to be a pharmacist. There's no way around that. Now, if you want to serve as a secondary position, maybe you're a quality assurance officer, you can be something else. You can be a scientist, a quality specialist, pharmacist, and whatever else. But then those roles taper down also. Um, so yeah, there are more professionals, but for ease of understanding, we'll stick with these. So I just didn't want to elaborate on the very intricate roles that you find in RA, in regulatory affairs, because it gets really tricky. Basically, every pharmaceutical company, the bigger they are, will have more roles and more positions. So a 500 employee manufacturer will have a lot more positions other than just an RP than a 10 employee company. Also, according to the licenses, then a license, then an importer, or, the manufacturer has the fuller scope. So let's look at these workplaces opportunities. We said that there are 10 sectors and environments that you can work in as a regulatory affairs pharmacist and even officers because they always need assistance and stuff. So the first and obvious one is in pharma, in manufacturing. You have big companies like Pfizer and Novartis and Aspen and Adcock and Cipla, and they manufacture those who actually make the stuff have a lot of RA positions at their plants. But then you have contract research organizations that do clinical trials, that do R&D, that do research, that also have multiple opportunities for RA. You have biotech companies that merge technology with pharmacy or biopharm biotech, um, and they have a lot of opportunities for regulations. You have medical device companies that do registration with health products. They also manufacture, assemble, import, export, wholesale. They also do pretty much most of all the same functions as for medicines. Then you have government authorities and health authorities. I mean, the National Department of Health needs regulatory experts. They need officers and pharmacists that work at the national office. Health authorities, SAPRA, and various others all need these regulatory experts to function. So, great opportunities there. Then you have consulting. Hello. Consulting is obviously my personal favorite, but once you have the expertise, you can offer that to clients, which would be these pharma companies and applicants. You could help them with their dossiers, compiling them, which we do. You can advise them, which we do. You can help them with licensing, which we do. So consulting is really cool. You can go into R&D, actual drug discovery, drug development, people who spend their days in labs trying to isolate a protein, isolate a chemical entity, compound, trying to refine it. Hectic stuff. You could go into quality assurance and control. These people specialize in product quality and safety, all the measures surrounding that, all the QMS surrounding that, and also pharmacovigilance, which is a little subsector within RA, but huge on its own. I mean, you could be surveilling the markets for each and every drug that's on the market. A whole team is out there surveilling it monthly, writing reports on any cases, whether from patients that have reacted in a weird way or unexpected way, and whether writing safety updates or whether liaising to inquire about ADRs. And it's a huge world on its own. So you could work in that. And lastly, health policies, advocacy. You could work in associations, pharmaceutical societies, or health, various health associations that advocate for patient rights, advocate for professional rights, improve standards, improve awareness regarding certain diseases, certain practices or methods. So regulatory affairs really touches on all these 10 sectors. So if you thought it was only manufacturing, you were missing out on 9 others. So here's a pop quiz. Write this down. Think of 3 companies or organizations that work in pharma, in regulatory affairs pharma, in one of the 10 sectors mentioned here, but actually name the company and write it down. And then if you're brave enough, fix your CV and apply. I double dare you. Okay, the application part doesn't have to be today, but why not? Fix your CV, tailor it to each of those 3 organizations, and ask for volunteering. Ask for shadowing. Ask for a meeting to go in and observe or have a look-see or speak to the responsible pharmacist. You have the steering wheel in your hands and you need to drive your career. So develop that boldness and go for it. Okay, so let's look at the licensing types for these establishments. So all the companies that exist in South Africa, for example, have one of these seven license types. Whether it's a manufacturer like Adcock, they probably have multiple because they do, they import, they export, they manufacture their final product, they manufacture their APIs. Sometimes they pack, they distribute. So all the activities relevant to their plant, if it's in a different area, so if it's all in one, the manufacturing license for either API or FPP is all encompassing. However, if they start dividing the plants, one might be in Gauteng, one in Cape Town, one in PE, or even in Gauteng, one might be in Midrand, one might be in Joburg, South, and wherever else. Each of those establishments need a separate license. So seven licenses exist. You have a manufacturing license for a raw material or active pharmaceutical ingredient. This is not the finished product that they take in the pharmacies or in the hospitals. It's just the actives. So if you take a paracetamol tablet, the active itself, paracetamol, is made first by someone else. And then the final manufacturer, the FPP manufacturer, purchases it or makes it in-house and then mixes it in with excipients, flavorants, whatever else, preservatives, and then create the final pharmaceutical product. So that's a separate license. You could be a packer. Sometimes overseas companies ship the stuff to South Africa and it only gets repackaged or packed here. So they would only need a packing license. Sometimes you're only distributing. If you're distributing multinationally and you want to distribute in South Africa, you may only need a distributor license. If you're a lab, if you test stability or quality or microbiology or any other kind of test, you need a license. If you import, you need a license. If you export, you need a license. So these are the seven license types that all manufacturers registered in South Africa must have. Got it? Looking at the compliance authorities, we mentioned the Department of Health. They obviously issue licenses to premises. They also register special permits for professionals. Pharmacy Council registers pharmacists and pharmacies. The SAPRA registers manufacturing establishments. They inspect and do all that. So these are the three biggest authorities that you will need to liaise with in regulatory affairs. And SAPRA obviously takes the crown. So this is the triple threat. When we do licensing for our clients at Pharmers, we call this the Holy Trinity because these are the three that you don't play with. If you don't get a license from one of them, you're doomed. If you get a license from the one and not from the other, you're stuck. So they always come in threes, and these are they. So compliance to medicines, to manufacturing, to pharmacy, it's with these three. Now, SAPRA. I wanted to take you on a little tour to the SAPRA website because remember we spoke of resources earlier. Now, the SAPRA website is a massive resource that you will have to know how to navigate if you want to get anywhere in regulatory affairs in South Africa. And then you can copy, paste, and replicate this to the FDA, to the EMA, and to any other regulator around the world. Go and study their website. Go and learn all of what's on there. Download many of their guidelines and read through it. That's a golden $1,000,000 tip right there. So let's quickly go to SAPRA, the website, and let's see. I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully I want to show you guys this Sapra website. Oops. Yeah. Having a blonde moment here because now my browser doesn't show. And I can't get to the internet. Help. Um, well, this is unfortunate. Oh, here we go. Okay. Um, let's try and go through here then. I hope you can still see my screen. So just type Sapra in any search engines. You should be able to, it's usually the first one that pops up. And here we are, the national regulator in South Africa. Let me tell you for free, this website, top tier, it has improved tenfold, 100-fold. Back in the day, back in 2017, yikes, they were struggling. But thank goodness for growth and progress. Now it's really nice. I love all the additions. They really done a good job. Okay, so this is the Sapra website. When you first when you first get into it, you will see your options here. Okay, I'm just trying to enlarge this so we have a better view. Okay, great. So all the tabs are showing now. So you have these tabs up here, the About Us page, who we are, the board, executive management, their partners, vacancies. Often come here if you're looking for jobs. I say set a timer, a reminder on your phone every week for checking vacancies on this APRA website. There's always a few. So currently you can apply for these ones. There's 4. But back to the tabs here, you have the operational unit. So this helps you navigate into all their departments. If you have a query on complementary medicines, come here. On biologicals, come here. On radiation control, orthodox, whatever. This tells you all their departments. If you need to look up a database or a register, you can come here. So they have licenses issued for medical devices. So all the establishments that are licensed will be here. An OTC directory with all the OTC medicines. You have all the pharma license establishments. You have the PI and PIL repository. So all the inserts in your medicines should be here, especially for OTC. You have all the registered health products in South Africa, and then all the registered vet products. Very useful lists to peruse. Then under e-services, so if you want to apply for something, if you're looking for any checker or tool, this is where you come. If you have an ADR to report, come here. If you have an IFE to report, you come here. If you have a complementary medicine license that you want to apply for because there's a separate portal, you go in here, etc., etc. So do peruse these. The e-library is where the resources are at. So this is what I want to really highlight for you guys. Um, all the acts, regulations, policies, the publications, any form you might need, every guidelines here. Presentations, if they've shared any templates, you might need some toolkits and tutorials also here. So the e-library is your best friend. And then news, sometimes they have communiques, they have press releases, events. You can come here to look for those. And if you need to contact them, this is where you go. All right, so that was a little quick see just to be aware of where you would find their resources. Okay, let's go back to the presentation and finish it off. Finish the last little bit. Oops, I think it kicked me out. Um, let's see. Yeah, okay. Resume. We were on slide 24. Okay, good. So peruse the Supra website, please. Okay, you go on there, save it on your favorites, have easy access to it, and go there very frequently. Okay, now we want to look at kind of international authority. So we saw the triple thread or the Holy Trinity in South Africa, but globally, there's the WHO, there's the EMA, we spoke of them, there's ICH, we spoke of them, there's FDA, we spoke of them. Go and stalk their websites, okay? You will find oodles and oodles of resources and information on there. Read up and do self-study. Okay, if you're really serious about regulatory affairs, these are the guys. These are they. And just a little quick look at systems. This is a whole different dive altogether, but just think of the systems you currently use at your current workplace or at your school, and kind of imagine that for future use, right? Systems is everything that goes into a working environment or to making something work, the processes and the quality assurance, the guidelines, the SOPs, the licenses. Systems and regulatory affairs are huge networks, like the regulator. Imagine all the systems they have in place, even for IT, for backup, for submissions, for receiving dossiers, for sending out queries, for inspections, for liaising with stakeholders. Like, it's huge and it's a lot. So we're not going to go into that now, but just know that in order to ensure operations and predictable outcomes, you absolutely need to have systems in place, and regulatory affairs is no different. Okay, some regulatory work. Let's see what's available. In all of the 10 environments we spoke of, there's basically two major roles, and that's you either compile or are part of the compiling team, or you evaluate or are part of the evaluating team. So even a scientist who's busy isolating a gene will have to provide evidence in their reports that supports that this gene is indeed the one that the drug acts on, and that will go into the dossier part of manufacturing, whether for API or for FPP. So they're part of compilers, right? The manufacturers, the biotech companies, everyone who works towards a submission. Then you have the consultants who assist with submissions, advise about submissions, actually do the submissions themselves, those who train for skills and for new equipment, new devices, new processes, new regulations, new policies, new procedures. And then you have observers. Sometimes certain stakeholders are just there to observe. So they have an inactive role, but are still towards either the compiler or actually the evaluator. And then on the evaluator side, so then that's the other side, right? The compilers submit to the authority, and the evaluators now evaluate all the submissions. So here you have the regulator themselves, the regulatory authorities who receive the applications. You have all the evaluators, all the teams and the committees that work towards that, all the inspectors, all the consultants, all the NGOs that assess and case process and manage the load and the workflows and the bulk of documentation that comes through, the trainers, the providers, you know, all those are now on the evaluator side. Those are the two main category in a loosely described way. So on a day-to-day, what do the compilers do? Now, when I was in RP, I used to compile dossiers for my company to submit to SAPRA. So I read through guidelines, a lot of guidelines. I needed to understand what's required, what the standards are. I needed to gather all evidence and information from our manufacturing floor, from our plant, from our batch production, from various other teams, the quality team, the regulatory team, the production team. We needed to, even from like inventory and like warehouse and like suppliers, if you change a bottle, that spec for that bottle needs to be known and needs to be accounted for and documented. So every little thing had to be gathered under information. And then you review a lot of things. You review new products, new suppliers, new changes, new developments, new dossiers or submissions. Like you review a lot of stuff. And then you train. You got to train your team. You got to train or receive skill development in GMP, in health and safety, in all kinds of stuff. Every department and every aspect of that manufacturing plant has to be trained and briefed and reviewed and monitored and documented. So it's a lot, right? Labs, you send your samples to the lab. The lab has to be qualified or reviewed and vetted and everything. Okay. So yeah. Compilers can work in offices. They can also work in labs. They can also work in manufacturing plants. They can work remotely. Sometimes they can work on site. It's a mix of a lot of different positions. Now with the evaluators, they are more on the office side, right? Even an inspector will just go to a site and inspect, but their day-to-day is not in like a warehouse or a manufacturing plant. So most evaluators are on the office side of things, agencies, authorities, officers, and they like review, they read through documents, they train, they assess, they review. Okay, I said that already. They recommend, They liaise with applicants and send queries. They inspect, they train. So it's a little more, I was going to say hands off. That's not the word. Uh, it's less physical in a way, whereas in manufacturing plant, you may be carrying boxes, moving along in production, it's very hands-on. But here it's much more brain work. So mostly offices and um, agencies and stuff. Now, a few common errors from the applicant point of view, because that's most likely where you will be, just ratio-wise, more regulators or regulatory affairs pharmacists are on the applicant side or manufacturing side or compiler side than on the regulator side. So poor knowledge of regulations means you're going to make more mistakes. Poor preparation for dossier applications because maybe you don't know or you're crunched for time or there's a deadline and you just submit. That causes a lot of errors and rejections. Lack of resources because these things are expensive. Like just to get the software for ECTD submissions, a lot of companies cannot afford that. So they'll get consultants or they'll try and get another company to do their submissions because they have the software. So lack of resources in general, even just to submit an application is expensive. And then the skills, having experienced regulatory affairs staff who can work on these submissions, on the applications, on the registration process, it gets expensive. So shortcuts end up happening and the quality drops. Then wrong evidence for application types. So if you're submitting a multi-source reliance submission, and then you provide evidence for a verified pathway, you know, not knowing the level of evidence or submission um, type that matches the data that you have is a problem. Misrepresentation of work. Sometimes, we've seen fraudulent dossiers and companies who try and pull off things and then they get caught. Like they didn't want to go through the entire process of maybe a clinical trial or a dissolution test or whatever kind of test for determining equivalence. Then they just submit like a literature review or something, which if you haven't done the actual test, you're going to get rejected. You need to do the test. So that kind of stuff. And then authorities changing regulations mid-application process, that's more of like a bad luck situation. Because if you were going along, cruising nicely, about to submit in a few months, and now a regulation changes and suddenly you're required to add these 3 new sets of documentations or of tests and studies, or now it throws you off. And now you have to go back and start over or apply more funds. And oftentimes they'll end up just wanting to submit either way. And that either gets rejected or takes another long process. So to all applicants out there, take the necessary time and the necessary resources because shortcuts are never okay in pharma, or else do something else, change industries. Because you just can't risk it with pharma. All right, we're almost done. The next thing is how to get started. How do you get started? So you want to become a regulator in the pharma industry. There are basically 4 ways to get in. Actually, 5, because the 5th one is luck. Some people have just fallen into it. Literally, somebody will call you and be like, I'm opening a new company. Do you want to be my RP? And there you are in. Or they'll say, oh, I'm leaving this company and they're looking for a replacement. Do you want me to recommend you? And you're in. Or maybe an old mentor of yours will say, oh, I know somebody who was looking, and they'll recommend you. So network, because sometimes knowing people helps. But for the most part, you will need to either start with an internship. A lot of people don't know this, but that's the easiest way to get in is through your internship. So right from school, excuse me, right from school when you're still applying for internship, don't go to retail or hospital. Yes, those are the easiest ones, but go to industry, go to SAPRA, apply and request internship in RA places. Because if they take you from internship, you're in, baby. You're in till the end, right? You don't have to get out ever again. So get in from internship. So if you're a student watching this, apply for your internship. Now, ComServe, you might still get a chance. It's getting a little late. ComServe, you can still get into industry, into production. That's the second way. Get in through manufacturing, production, or QA. Um, but again, internal shifting will be easier if you're already in the pharma company. Um, but by the time you finish internship at ComServe, it gets really hard because then you're considered a fully fledged pharmacist and now they want experience, which who's going to give you experience because nobody takes you from scratch unless you're an intern. So it gets really, things become really difficult by then. Now you're a grade one pharmacist, you did your internship in retail and hospital, perhaps. Now you're kind of stuck on the outside. You need to go back to maybe production, quality assurance, volunteering, which is my fourth one, you know, go into a pharma company and ask to volunteer. Now, this one is tricky because a lot of them won't want to share their IP, and I think I explained that on the next slide. But actually, I do explain that on the next slide. So let me go to the next slide. But unfortunately, in South Africa, there are no official routes. There's not a registration and a training that you can do that guarantees you get into industry and into RA. If there was, everybody would have done it. So this also ties into the whole accreditation thing. When people ask, which accredited course in RA can I do, or which degree, and we're going to talk about that in training, but which degree can get me into RA? You could go do an MSc, you can go do an MPharm. You're still going to be back to scratch, back to square one, because that doesn't get you further. No company in South Africa says the entry requirement for RA is training. And again, if it was, people would have gotten through that route. You have people who did so much training, who have masters in RA and still cannot get in. You have people who went to all the accredited providers, the training courses, and still were rejected. So I'm going to give you the key here on the next slide. But I just want to reiterate, until the Pharmacy Council sets specialities for industrial pharmacists and until it's recognized and until there's an actual path into it, I think they want to do like a residency program and you doing like 2 years and then you being registered as a industrial pharmacist, then your training will get you somewhere and then your actual registration will count. But for now, it's all in the experience. Okay, so like I said, internship, the best and the easiest. Apply, get in, and you're in. A lot of them are poorly advertised, unfortunately. You get a lot of hospitals advertising for hospital internships, a lot of community internships. But with manufacturing and RA, here and there, you have to really go for them. You have to ask, even if they're not advertising, volunteer yourself. I'll come for 12 months. You can just cover my transport and food or whatever, and I'll do an internship for you. Entice them, make them want to take you. Training programs, like I said, do you do a whole degree, a short course? I mean, we have a short course that we offer too. Don't get me wrong. They help in that you will have the theory and somewhat of an understanding, but as of now, companies want practical experience. So, how do you compare between a short course, a training, a degree? Well, you have to see what the outcomes are. You have to see what your time span and duration is. Do you have 2 years to give? Do you have 6 months? Do you have the money, the cost? Some of these degrees are expensive. And how relevant is it to you? Like, I had a client do a 2 year master's degree in Cape Town in RA and then came to us wanting some work. And I said, like, show me your curriculum, show me your outcomes. What can you do? And this degree still didn't teach her how to compile a dossier. She didn't know anything. She still, after all that training and all that money and all that time, was right back to square one. So do check the curriculum, you guys. Check that will this, with these outcomes, will I be able to do ABC? What do pharma companies require? They want you to compile. Will I be able to compile? That's the $1 million question. So even with the training programs, the short courses, ask them before you enroll. Will this teach me how to compile an ECTD dossier? The answer is yes. Go ahead. If it's no, stay away. Now, to take that further, you can also ask them if they have a practical, um, if they have practical experience, practical compilation, examples, because some short courses are just theory. Ours has actual dossiers, okay, that you can practice with. So, in my opinion, that's elevated. At least you've seen a real life dossier, you've seen how it's put together, you've seen some of the documents that go into it, you have additional experience. But just to learn it in theory, eh. So back to volunteering and shadowing, it's not a preferred method. A lot of companies will be like, it's confidential information and blah, blah, blah. Offer to sign NDAs. That's fine. Try and persuade them with contracts, they'll take a serious commitment over just like a 1 week thing. If you're just going to come in and out, they don't really value you. But if you're committing to work for a year, for example, I'll work for free for a year, then they can see the value in training you because now they'll get some work out of you and they won't have to necessarily pay for it. I know that sounds bad, but you want to get to your objective at the end of the day. Forget the sacrifices you're going to have to invest in. So it may be a part of RA, like PV. Some companies are specific. You can ask to just do their safety monitoring, their ADR reporting. You don't have to be involved in every aspect of the company. So ask for the least invasive part, right? You could just attend monthly meetings on whatever aspect, or you could just oversee or overlook or shadow the person that's doing stock take in the warehouse, for example. Like ask for a minimal task so that they don't see it as bothersome and then work your way in. So, on that note, Farmers Academy is the only provider that offers an actual RA work placement in the form of a 12-month internship. Yes, with our innovative spirit, we realized quickly that all this training, all these short courses still don't give you that experience. So we thought, actually, we have clients that request RA work. Let the academy learners come and work with us and get the 1 year experience. So if you're interested in that, do send us an email. But you will have to do an RA course to begin with so that you have the theory in the background. And then you can get the 1 year experience, which is so valuable in this current industry because then when they ask you, do you have experience? You'll be like, bet, of course. course I do. I worked at Farmers Academy for a whole year doing RA work, PV work, and here's my certificate. Like, you will be untouchable. So, no matter what, with all these options, the key here is your resume, because whether you apply in person, on the phone, by email, you're going to have to submit your CV. Whether you're asking for a volunteering gig, whether you're asking to come in and train, whether you're doing whatever, you're going to need a banging CV. So make sure it's irresistible. Don't be overlooked by a boring, bland document. Make it colorful, make it pop. Add a profile picture, especially if you're photogenic and you really like come through and make it work for you. Let the keywords be there. Don't send an RACV with no mention of RA anywhere. Even if you don't have the experience, mention it as in you've read in theory, like you've self-studied on regulator affairs, on GMP, on whatever other relevant keywords they have in their company profile, in the job advert, whatever. Use the keywords, okay? Very important. So in preparing your CV, like I said, make sure you use all that's available to you, the training you've done, add it in there. Don't just say, I see so many wrong CVs that just list any certification they've done. Like you'll say Farmers Academy RA Training 2024, 2025. It doesn't say what you did. Expand. ECTD dossier compilation, modules 1 through 5. That's a lot more poignant. So don't let your CVs be like inconclusive. Like the person has to figure out what you did or what you know. Spell it out. Describe your self-study. You perused guidelines or you've completed a full 100 hours on, the ICH or the ECTD guideline pertaining to safety, pertaining to quality, pertaining to efficacy, whatever. So, and any other reading that you've done. By the way, we now have our RA handbook available. Very good read, if I say so myself. But whatever books, documents, literature, journals that you've read on RA, included. Nothing is wasted. And then when it comes to interviews, you need to practice what you're going to say. Practice common questions, practice in the mirror, repeat it to yourself, and always elevate the way you say things. It's like, what made you want to apply to this job? Oh, I just wanted to switch sectors. That's bland. But if they ask you what made you want to apply to this job, oh, seeing that your company is the top 3 manufacturer in the country, I leaped at the opportunity to increase my career objectives and scope, or the challenge, to challenge myself and to learn more and to contribute positively to such a innovative company and much different, right? So, and the more you practice that, the more you know what to say and the more it comes out smooth and confident. Okay, what you can add on your CV also is all the associations you're a member of. So if you're applying for an RA position, do pick 2 or 3 associations that are relevant to RA and join them so that you can say, I'm a member of SAPRA, XYZ, and that also adds a bit of credibility for you. If you are planning on your 12 months preparation, if you want to be into RA in the next 3 years, or if you want to prepare for your internship in the next 6 months, you got to start today and map it out. It's not going to happen by coincidence. You have to map it out. Weekly, what are your tasks? I'm going to look up this website. I'm going to peruse the internet. I'm going to learn how to customize my CV better. I'm going to learn in a month, in 2 months. I'm going to read this article. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to do this training. And then at the end of the 6 months of the year, you're ready. Your CV is ready. You're banging. And everything is like good to go. All right. So, in conclusion, we've come to the end of all this rambling. To recap, what you've learned here today is that there are so many opportunities in RA. A lot of them are flexi, a lot of them are remote. I know I speak to young mothers who just got married and have a baby and want to stay at home, but still kind of work part-time. This is the sector for you. The RA rests on guidelines and regulations. Those are key, so make sure you read up and get clued up about them. SAPRA is the regulator in SA, so their website will be your BFF place to go to for reading, for references, for updates. The current format used in SA and most of the rest of the world is ECTD, and it does comprise of 5 modules. And there is a SAPRA RIMS portal for ECTD 3.1 for applicants to submit and to receive responses. Do look up all of these websites and portals. Do read up on them. Module 1 is administrative. Module 2 is summary. 3 is quality. 4 is safety. And 5 is efficacy. And not all training is equivalent. Doing a master's in RA will not get you closer to doing a short course in RA. You'll have more theory and you'll have more background, but practically on the market, the companies want experience. Also, RA is not for everyone. After this little session, you might think, not for me. I'm going to stick to hospital. I'm going to go to start my own pharmacy in retail. I'm going to go in R&D. I want to go to clinical trials, whatever, but that's also good. You don't have to force yourself into a sector that you don't like. And then RA is ever changing. We started doing these trainings in 2021. And boy, let me tell you, we update the material every year. Like things change quickly. So if you trained in 2017 and up to 2023, your knowledge is already kind of outdated. The latest guidelines were released late last year, and our 2025 short courses are all getting updated now as we speak to include the latest because things are shifting quickly and training has to adapt. And yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, experience is all that these companies want. For the most part, you'll see on adverts, even junior positions, the minimum is 1 year of experience, which is why we started providing the 1 year placement. And we really hope to contribute positively to this industry and open the door for many, many of you to come in until it becomes official with the Pharmacy Council. And even still then, we will be a provider of training and of industrial pharmacist specialty training and education. So on that note, the ball is now in your court, right? You've heard it all. You've seen it here. It's up to you. Go fix your CV or don't. Go register or enroll for our full short course to learn more how to compile or not. Change sectors, do what you wanna, but now you have the information. So plan, pace yourself, and no matter what your goals are, reach them. There is a little bit of homework here, okay? If you're watching this on the free stream, do email us so we can send you the homework sheet. If you're watching this from the Academy website, The downloadable sheet should be right there next to this screen. Otherwise, just email us and ask. We will send it to you. This step is compulsory if you want to receive a certificate. If not, if you just wanted to watch, that's great. Hopefully, you make the right decisions for your own self and your own career, and we'll be here to root you on whichever way you decide to go. Go back through the notes, revise the main points, and really let it digest within you. You don't have to take a decision now, by the way. You can sleep on it, come back to it in a few days, in a few weeks, and reflect and give yourself enough time. We do also have a feedback form. If you're doing the submissions for the homework, please also submit the feedback form along with it. We always appreciate a good old feedback. It helps us improve. It helps us keep the standard at excellent. Anything you notice or realize or comments, queries, or complaints, do send them forth. We love to know what you think and how we can be better. All right, so if you do successfully submit your assessment, you will receive a certification, and that will help you on your CVs already and in the application of the deeper, fuller short course. All right, some of the guidelines and websites used for this presentation. Thank you so much for your undivided attention and time. We'll see you hopefully soon in one of our other short courses. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Bye.